There is someone in your life right now who knows, with quiet certainty, that if they ask you for something, you will say yes. They're not guessing, they've tested it multiple times, and you passed every single test in the wrong direction. Here's the part that stings. It's not because you're weak, it's because you're genuinely good. You help people, you show up, you follow through. You are, by most measures, someone worth knowing. But somewhere along the way, that goodness got exploited, and what started as generosity has quietly become a system that other people rely on, one that costs you your time, your energy, and piece by piece, your self-respect. Today we change that, not with aggression, not with coldness, with one fundamental shift in how you operate, a shift so clear and so simple that the first time you make it, something in the people around you will visibly recalibrate. Stay with me. What I'm about to show you isn't just practical. It's going to reframe something you've probably been getting wrong for years. Let's start with the uncomfortable truth. There are two distinct orientations people bring to their relationships. Some people move through the world as givers. They help, they accommodate, they prioritize other people's comfort, often at the expense of their own. Others operate primarily as takers. They receive, they request, they extract, and they feel relatively little friction doing it. If you're watching this, you're almost certainly a giver, and that's not a flaw. The world genuinely needs people who show up, who follow through, who care enough to inconvenience themselves for someone else. But here's the dynamic nobody explains clearly enough. Takers have a finely tuned instinct for identifying givers. They're not calculating about it, most of them aren't even conscious of it, but they run an efficient diagnostic in the early stages of any relationship. Will this person say yes, and how long will they keep saying yes? Once a taker identifies a consistent yes, they stop asking whether to ask, they just ask. Think about the person in your life who only calls when they need something. Think about the colleague who consistently offloads tasks onto you with a smile and a casual assumption that you'll handle it. Think about the friend who appears, warm and present, precisely when there's something they need from you, and becomes mysteriously unavailable when the equation reverses. These are not always malicious people. Most of them are simply people who found a system that works, and they kept using it because nothing ever indicated they should stop. You were the system, and you kept running. The question worth sitting with isn't why they kept asking. The question is why you kept saying yes long after you stopped wanting to. The answer lives inside a deeply conditioned belief that most givers carry, the belief that a no requires justification. Watch what happens when someone who struggles with boundaries tries to decline a request. Hey, can you cover for me this weekend? Oh, I'm so sorry, I actually have this thing and my week has been completely insane, and I really wish I could, but I can't this time. I'm really sorry. Maybe next weekend. Listen to what's actually happening in that response. It's not a boundary, it's a negotiation. Every reason offered, every apology added, every maybe next time attached, these are invitations to push back. They communicate, here are my reasons, please evaluate whether they're sufficient. And if the reasons don't pass the other person's informal review, they push, come on, it'll only take a few hours, or I thought we were close, or the quietly devastating, I don't know what I'd do without you. And you cave because you were never really saying no, you were asking for permission to say no, and they declined to give it. Here's the psychological reality underneath this. When you explain yourself, you are implicitly communicating that your decision is provisional, that it exists in a state of negotiation rather than resolution, that the right amount of pressure could move it. Compare that to a completely different response to the same request. Hey, can you cover for me this weekend? No, I can't do that. Full stop, no addendum, no apology, no escape hatch offered. The silence that follows is uncomfortable, but it is a very specific kind of discomfort. It's the discomfort of a person encountering a boundary that is clearly load-bearing, something that was built to hold weight and does. Most people, when they meet that boundary, simply adjust. They find another solution. They call someone else. They handle it themselves, because the implicit message in a clean, unexplained no is, this is decided. There is nothing to negotiate here. Here's what chronic overavailability actually costs you, and I want you to sit with this honestly. It costs you time in the obvious sense, but the less discussed cost is what it does to the quality of your relationships. When you are always available, always accommodating, always the person who finds a way to say yes, you train the people around you to see your time as a default resource rather than a considered gift. Your help loses its meaning not because they're ungrateful, but because it's never scarce. You've made it ambient. There's a well-documented psychological principle at work here. We value what we perceive to be finite. The help of someone who carefully selects when to offer it carries more weight than the help of someone who offers it reflexively. Paradoxically, by giving so readily, you've made your generosity feel ordinary. And underneath all of this, something quieter and more corrosive is happening. Resentment. Not the loud, explosive kind, the slow kind. The kind that accumulates in small deposits every time you said yes when your entire body wanted to say no. Every time you showed up for someone who wouldn't show up for you. Every time you stayed late, picked up the slack, held the weight, and felt the bitter aftertaste of having done it not from genuine willingness, but from an inability to refuse. That resentment doesn't just affect the relationships where it was generated. It seeps. It colors how you see people in general. It creates a low-grade exhaustion that you might have mistaken for introversion or burnout, but is actually something more specific, the fatigue of a person who has been living for everyone else's comfort instead of their own. What's the cost of the guilt that arrives when you try to say no? Because that guilt is real, and it is the primary mechanism keeping this whole system in place. Here's what you need to understand about that guilt. It is not a signal from your conscience. It is conditioning. It was installed through repetition, through social pressure, through years of learning that your value was tied to your usefulness, to trigger the moment you consider withdrawing your cooperation. Real guilt arises when you harm someone, when you act against your own values, when you cause genuine damage. The guilt you feel for saying no to a request you didn't want to fulfill, that is manufactured discomfort. Discomfort engineered to make withdrawal feel like a moral failure. It isn't. Declining to give someone what they want is not the same as hurting them. They are not the same thing, and treating them as equivalent has cost you enough. Now let me show you how to actually identify whether someone in your life is genuinely close to you, or primarily close to what you provide. Ask yourself 4 questions about that person. Does this person reach out when they have nothing to ask for? Pure contact, curiosity about your life, a shared observation, an invitation with no agenda attached. If you genuinely struggle to recall those moments, the pattern is telling you something. When you're struggling, do they actually show up? Not performatively, but practically. Do they ask follow-up questions? Do they remember what you told them last time? Is there evidence that your interior life exists in their mind when you're not in front of them? Have they ever genuinely inconvenienced themselves for you, without it being transactional, given something up, made themselves less comfortable, offered something that cost them? And finally, the most revealing question, when you've said no to this person, how did they respond? Because this is the clearest window into what's actually happening. People who care about you as a person will absorb a no with grace. They may be briefly disappointed, but they recalibrate. They find another solution. They don't collapse, manipulate, or make you responsible for their distress. People who care primarily about what you provide, they treat your no as a problem to be solved. They apply pressure. They invoke the relationship as leverage. They make you feel that your refusal is a form of betrayal. That reaction isn't grief over losing a friend. It's frustration at losing a resource. And recognizing the difference is how you stop confusing obligation for love. So what does the actual work look like? Not in principle, in practice, in the specific texture of your real life. Stop over-explaining your decisions. This is the foundational shift, and everything else builds on it. When you decline something, the complete answer is, I can't do that. You don't owe anyone a justification for how you allocate your time. The moment you begin explaining, you invite negotiation. Keep the response clean, keep it warm if the relationship warrants warmth, but keep it final. I can't make that work, period. When they push back in some will, your only move is to repeat yourself without escalation. I understand, I still can't do it. No new reasons, no heightened emotion. The same answer delivered with the same calm. This is sometimes called the broken record approach, and its power is in its consistency. You're not arguing. You're simply demonstrating that there is nothing to argue about. The decision has been made. Stop performing constant availability. When you respond to every message within seconds, when you pick up every call regardless of what you're doing, when you drop whatever you're engaged in the moment, someone needs your attention, you are communicating that your time has no competing value, that it exists in a state of permanent readiness for whoever needs it. Introduce deliberate friction, not as a game, but as an honest representation of the fact that you have a life with its own rhythm and priorities. Answer when you're ready. Finish your thought before you look up. Return calls when you have the space to give them quality attention. This isn't rudeness. This is the ordinary behavior of a person who takes their own time seriously. And when people see that you treat your time as valuable, their assessment of its value shifts accordingly. Audit your most unbalanced relationships. Take one relationship, just one, that has been nagging at you. Run it through the 4 questions from earlier. Map the actual pattern of exchanges, who initiates, what the initiations are usually about, who shows up when the other is struggling. Then ask yourself, if I removed my usefulness from this relationship entirely, would anything remain? If the answer is genuinely unclear, that's important information, not necessarily a reason to end the relationship, but a reason to stop pouring into it at the same rate, quietly, without drama. Simply redirect some of that energy toward relationships where the exchange is genuinely mutual. Anticipate and tolerate the pushback. When you begin operating differently, when the yes becomes a no, when the immediate response becomes a considered one, some people will react with visible displeasure. They'll call it a change in you, and they'll mean it as an accusation. You're different. You've become cold. You're not the person they thought you were. They're right that you've changed. They're wrong that it's a problem. What they're actually expressing is that the old arrangement was comfortable for them, and the new one isn't. Their discomfort is real, but it is not your responsibility. The people who belong in your life will adapt to a version of you that has self-respect. The people who were only there for the arrangement will exit, and that exit, as painful as it might feel initially, is an act of clarification. It's the relationship finally telling you the truth about what it was. Let it. Here's what nobody tells you about the other side of this. When you stop running the old system, when you stop being endlessly available, endlessly accommodating, endlessly useful, something unexpected happens to your remaining relationships. They get better. Not in spite of your new limits, but partly because of them. Because the people who stay when you stop performing availability are the people who were actually there for you. And when you're no longer depleted, no longer quietly resentful, no longer giving from an empty account, you show up to those relationships differently, more present, more genuine, more capable of actual generosity, because it's finally chosen rather than compelled. You will lose some people. This is real, and I won't minimize it. Some of the people you lose you'll have known for years, and there will be a period of grieving that, because the clarity of what those relationships actually were doesn't make them feel less significant. You were in them fully. You just weren't in them equally. But what fills the space they leave is not the hollow independence some people imagine when they think about setting limits. It's the quiet solidity of a life with better architecture, more honest relationships, more energy, the strange relief of no longer maintaining a version of yourself designed primarily to be useful to everyone else. The guilty feeling when it comes, and it will come, is not evidence that you're doing something wrong. It's evidence that you're doing something new, something your nervous system hasn't been trained to recognize as acceptable yet. Sit with it, breathe through it. It passes, usually faster than you expect. And on the other side of it is something you may not have felt in a long time, the clean, uncomplicated sense of having honored yourself. You are not a resource. You are not a backup plan. You are not the person whose purpose is to absorb everyone else's inconveniences. You are a person with finite time, genuine needs, and a life that deserves to be lived from the inside rather than administered from the outside. One conversation, one moment, one word said clearly, without apology, without the usual scaffolding of justification and retreat. Just know. Watch what that word does to the room. Watch what it does to the relationship. Watch what it does, quietly and permanently, to the way you understand your own worth. You don't need to be meaner. You don't need to be harder. You just need to stop asking for permission to take your own life seriously. Start there, everything else follows.